More people know me from Fox News Channel than ever knew me from running for president.
Republican presidential candidates debate.
Mike Huckabee of Arkansas.
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee has been busy since finishing second to John McCain in the 2008 presidential primaries, hosting a show on Fox.
Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Mike Huckabee.
Talking news on the radio, starting up a political action committee, and writing 3 books. Huckabee's knack for communicating to middle America is paying off. He received the highest favorability rating among potential Republican 2012 contenders in a recent Associated Press poll, came in second in the Values Voters Summit presidential straw poll, and was named by likely GOP voters in Iowa as the favorite to win the Republican nomination. You are leading in a number of polls that people take about Republicans who have a good shot against Barack Obama. Does that factor in 2 years out?
It's not what's going to be the determining factor for me. I mean, you can't base it on some opinion polls that doesn't put money in the bank in your campaign. It doesn't recruit volunteers up and down America.
I'm not sure that Huckabee has the ability to raise the tens or hundreds of millions necessary to run a presidential campaign in 2012. Huckabee was not able to raise much of anything for 2008, and that's what did him in.
But not before Huckabee won 8 states, finishing with the highest number of delegates behind John McCain.
He's a credible, believable guy. He clearly speaks his mind. He comes across well on the media.
Americans have a lot of questions about
He's well thought of by a lot of conservatives. He has a good sense of humor. I saw him woo crowds in Iowa early on with just simply his wonderful personality.
Huckabee's ability to woo crowds and exude a sense of authenticity comes in part from his background as a Baptist minister. As governor, Huckabee was a model social conservative who supported pro-life and traditional marriage legislation.
that every human life has intrinsic worth and value,
giving him a huge amount of support from evangelical Christians. Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels wrote that perhaps Republicans should have a truce on social issues as they deal with emergency economic situations. You've written about that. Mm-hmm. You disagree.
It's not that I think we ought to put front and center the issues like sanctity of life and the point of marriage. But I don't want us to ever forget that those are issues that do matter. They matter because they're somewhat the underpinning of what we are as a people, a civilization.
But to some economic conservatives, Huckabee is a big government Republican who got failing grades for increasing state spending and raising taxes. That makes him fume.
One of the things that was most frustrating to me during the last presidential race was this attack that, well, Huckabee, he's just a big government guy. No, I wasn't. But I governed in a state where we had to balance the budget and we had to comply with such things as our Constitution that mandated an equitable and adequate education for every student. I inherited a road system that had to be rehabilitated. I also believe that as important as it is to keep taxes low, it's also important to pay for what you do. I don't believe in deficit spending.
Your thoughts on Obamacare and the government efforts to improve health insurance?
Well, the biggest mistake of Obamacare was that it was focused on this mystical magic of being able to add 32 million people into a system, cut $500 billion out of the money to pay for it, obliterating the payments to the providers, and somehow coming up with a system that's supposed to work better and make everybody happy. That's crazy.
So you'd repeal it?
I would repeal it if you could. I don't think it's realistic that you're going to repeal it as long as Obama's president, because he can veto it. But I do think that you can surgically go after provisions.
What do you think is the most pressing foreign policy issue facing the U.S.?
I think it's how we're going to view our role in the world, whether we are going to be the world's policeman and patrol every street in every country, or whether we're going to focus on securing our own borders and protecting Americans, both here and abroad, from attack.
If Huckabee decides to run, he can surely expect to take some heat from law and order Republicans for commuting the sentence of career criminal Maurice Clemens, who would later murder 4 Washington state police officers after his release from prison. Why did you take that action back then, and do you regret it?
If I had the same information in front of me now that I had then, I'd make the same decision. Because I was making it based on the case of a 16-year-old black male who was given 108 years, which was far more of a sentence for a robbery than most people would get for murder. There was a whole string of things that went wrong in the case of Maurice Clemens. He went back to prison after his parole, and he should have stayed there. But later, both Washington State and my successor messed up the paperwork, and he wasn't held when he could have and should have been.
In the end, the question for Huckabee is whether his folksy popular appeal and the new audience he has gained since 2008 will give him enough traction in what is shaping up to be a contentious race to 2012.
It's a whole lot more about the money than it is the message. And so because it's more process-focused than policy-focused, we end up not necessarily giving attention to the people with the best ideas, but giving attention to the people with the machinery and the money, even if their message doesn't even sell.
And if you ran, would Chuck Norris be on the campaign again?
Gosh, I hope so, because I'd hate to run without him.